This is Charter Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance at the California Republican Party Convention in the Bay Area. We are joined today by none other than Ron Unz. We've heard his name for many decades in the state of California. He is back. He is running for the United States Senate, a late entrant in the race, but one who is mixing it up significantly. Why did you decide to come back and run for the U.S. Senate, sir?
Well, there was one issue more than anything else. 18 years ago, I and a number of people got together to ensure that all immigrant children in California are taught English as soon as they start school. It worked out very well. Their teachers were happy, their parents were happy, their test scores increased dramatically. Latinos are doing much better educationally in California because of it. And for unknown reasons, the state legislature, the politicians in Sacramento, both Democrat and Republican, have united to try to repeal the initiative and put back Spanish-only classes in the public schools for Latino
and let's
children.
break that up and explain. So we've seen these buttons all over the place, Keep English, Ron Unz. And so to take us back, Prop 227 in 1998 all but eliminated bilingual education. So today a student enters and they go into English immersion, and then they wind up learning the language and they progress.
Exactly. They're given intensive sheltered English immersion for a few months or a year. Once they've learned enough English, they're moved in with all the other students, and they really do very well.
Are you opposed to dual language immersion? That's become very popular.
Not at all. And in fact, the dual language immersion programs in California are more numerous today than when our initiative passed. They're not prohibited by the initiative, they're allowed. The difference is the parents have to sign a waiver.
Okay.
One reason they're trying to repeal our initiative is many immigrant parents want their children taught English immediately.
Right.
And they won't sign the waivers. And I think that's wrong. You really should give the parents the rights on the matter.
What about the notion, for example, that if your native language is Spanish, it can be easier to learn, for example, math in your native language, and it transfers very easily. And so are we putting these kids at a disadvantage if we don't at least let them learn the basics of math, as an example, and then transfer it?
A lot of it depends on the age. Remember, the overwhelming majority of the students we're talking about are in kindergarten or first grade when they start school here. They were born in California. They were born in the United States. At that age, it's very easy and simple for them to learn another language. What you were saying is right. That was the theory behind bilingual education. The theory didn't work. As soon as they switched to English, the test scores went up by 50%, 100% in just a few years. And in fact, the founding president of the California Association of Bilingual Educators admitted he'd been wrong for 30 years, that bilingual education didn't work, that English immersion did work, and became an advocate.
But what's really remarkable about this debate is it does get caught up in kind of ethnic, racial, linguistic arguments. And when I speak with you, I don't think that you're trying to pick on an ethnicity, a language, a group. So how do you kind of break it apart and explain this is not about quashing Spanish or Lao or Vietnamese or whatever it is? It's just we are a nation where English is the dominant language, and we're trying to give kids a heads up or a leg up.
That's exactly true. It's a complex issue, and one thing that gives me an advantage of it, which helped out 18 years ago, is that I come from a very, very strong pro-immigrant background. I doubt if there are too many public figures in California who have stronger credentials in terms of supporting immigrants when they were under attack.
It's interesting you mentioned that in 94
exactly.
With Prop 187, when the Republican establishment was very much behind Prop 187, you, a Republican yourself, came out against.
Absolutely against it. Not only against it, but I ran against Pete Wilson in the Republican primary, challenged him for renomination, and I was one of the top featured speakers at a gigantic march against 187.
But here we are at the Republican convention. The presumptive nominee is Donald Trump. I had to walk through protesters to get into the hotel. They were protesters most significantly of Latino descent, felt as if they're being attacked when Trump calls Mexicans rapists and he calls them murderers. Muslim Americans feel under attack with his allegations or actually advocacy for excluding Muslims, at least temporarily, tracking Muslims. This is tricky.
Exactly, and I'm not Donald Trump's greatest fan. He says a lot of outrageous things. And I think he really is hurting the Republican Party
Do
among
you?
some of the groups he mentioned. One reason I got into this U.S. Senate race is it looked like Donald Trump was going to be the presidential nominee.
Right.
He might end up focusing on this English issue in California, and that made me concerned. In other words, I wouldn't be sure whether Donald Trump would be the best spokesman for keeping English in the public schools. While running for office myself, possibly being on the November ballot in the U.S. Senate, would allow me to frame the issue in a much better way.
And do you feel as if you
Trump
can frame it in a way that is not seen as divisive? It's seen as inclusionary, not exclusionary. Because I remember 2/27, 1998. I don't know, it just seemed as if the issue really got caught up in division.
Well, I mean, I really think it's very possible. What has happened now, 18 years have gone by. I mean, the system has worked. The current schools are doing a pretty good job in English. Latinos now outnumber Anglos in the University of California
You're
system.
right, I saw that
They've
in all those
done much
numbers.
better educationally. I think one reason they've done much better is they're taught English immediately when they start school, and I think their parents know that, the community knows that, and I think we'll have a good chance of framing the issue
I want
effectively.
to talk about the minimum wage.
Sure.
So, as we know in California, we recently passed a minimum wage increase. It's in steps. It will get us to $15 an hour. A total of 0 Republicans voted for it in the legislature. The Republican I'm looking at, I don't know if you would have voted for that increase, but you are in support of minimum wage increases.
Absolutely. For 5 years now, I've made the minimum wage one of my biggest public policy issues. And strange as it may sound, I was one of the people who moved it back to the center of the national stage, including persuading the Democrats to support it. What I've been advocating is a $12 an hour minimum wage at the federal level,
National.
which is something what I would do if I were elected to the Senate. I think 15 is probably a bit too high in California. 15 is fine for San Francisco, it's fine for LA, it's fine for Silicon Valley. It really will cause problems in the Central
And let me
Valley.
ask you, I'm sure you know in
Sure.
Oregon, they passed a minimum wage increase, but they tiered it.
Exactly.
So in urban areas,
Exactly.
it's one level, in suburban, it's a little lower, in rural, it's a little lower. And I wouldn't call Oregon a red state. I mean, all the Democrats got together and did that. So what about here in California?
That would have been a better approach in California. You see,
But why couldn't we do that here?
Well, I think one problem is that, you know, Governor Brown, I'm glad he signed the bill because 15 may not be perfect, but it's probably better than what we had before 10.
Okay.
But the problem was, as he signed the bill, he said, well, he didn't know of any economic logic behind the minimum wage.
It was interesting.
So he doesn't really understand the issue. He said it's a moral issue. Now, you know, if you view something as a moral issue, you don't look at the details. You don't look at whether it makes sense to have different numbers in different parts of the state. You know, again, 13 might have been fine statewide, 15 in San Francisco, but I mean, 15 is probably just too high for the Central Valley.
Even if we get to 2021-22.
It makes it less of a problem. And so, you know, that's why I'm glad overall he signed the bill. You know, and he put an off-ramp so that, for example, if certain problems happen, he could pull back a little bit.
And it's delayed for smaller
Exactly,
businesses.
Exactly.
But
So,
what about your friends, so presuming you go to the Senate, the U.S. Senate, on the Republican side? I mean, they're not supporting a national minimum wage.
I can be pretty persuasive. Over the years, I've managed to move a lot of Republicans to supporting minimum wage, which really surprised people. Phyllis Schlafly, one of the most right-wing Republicans, has endorsed the minimum wage increase. Rick Santorum, very conservative.
Former U.S. Senator from
running
Pennsylvania.
for president.
Right.
Mitt Romney endorsed a
I've heard of
minimum wage
him.
increase. Tim Powalty.
Former congressman
some
from
of the
Minnesota.
top finance writers at National Review. I think I've made a very strong case for the issue in a number of different ways. Look, a very low minimum wage amounts to corporate welfare, because all the workers who are getting $8 or $9 or $10 an hour, they're getting social welfare benefits.
A Republican said corporate welfare.
It's corporate welfare.
That's a Republican.
I'm an honest Republican.
His name is Ron Unz. He is a
Great to see
candidate
you.
for the U.S. Senate, primary in June, general in November. I'm Brad Pomerance at the California Republican Party Convention. This is Charter Local Edition.